Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Gonna do a couple things today. The first being, I want to talk about, I wouldn't necessarily call it so much of a band, but a project, musical project. Really behind one sort of mastermind, songwriter, composer. I'm talking about Neverending White Lights, which is the basically brainchild of Daniel Victor, he's from Canada, I believe, part of Ontario. I hate to get any of this stuff wrong. Yeah, Windsor. But I know in the last, I don't know how many years, he's sort of maybe had like dual citizenship. He's resided at points in the state of Michigan, which isn't that far, I guess, from either Windsor, where he was most recently living, or he also may reside in Canada. I don't think it's Toronto, but in Ontario. Anyway, Canadian musician. So Neverending White Lights, why I call it a project is that it's his sort of vision, and he's the songwriter. Daniel Victor has written, I believe, all the songs that they've released only a few records. But I'll go over them now. But the unique thing about Neverending White Lights, well, there's many unique things, but one of the most unique things about them is you have Daniel Victor writing songs, and then he's had a handful of different singers, and I want to say also musicians, but it's more notably just singers on many of the different songs. Now, a large portion of those, a large percentage of them are from Canada, Canadian musicians, so I don't know if that was just easier to actually have them sing on his album, on this project, or just because he has a lot of connections with Canadian musicians. I'm not sure why that exactly is, but it makes a lot of sense. But not everyone. So where I found out about Neverending White Lights was actually from being, when I got into the band Hours, and understanding and learning about Jimmy Necco singing on a couple of their songs. When I discovered Neverending White Lights, because I discovered Hours music in 2005, the summer of 2005. It was like August of 2005 for me. I don't know how long after. I think that it was that Jimmy Necco had sung the song A Final Hymn, but I didn't know who it was. I thought it was one of his songs or was a cover of something else. But he had sung that. I'd gotten some recordings. There's a lot of Hours live recordings. He was a road warrior, Jimmy Necco, of course, especially in the early to mid 2000s. But then, yeah, I mean, 2005, 2006, in that cycle. And I don't know if it was when the announcement of the second record, Act 2, was when I found out. So Jimmy Necco was going to be on Act 2, just like he was on Act 1. And so, I mean, it was probably, and that was late in 2007. Probably was in 2007 when I first discovered Neverending White Lights. So, unfortunately, I don't go back to the very beginning. But I've been a fan of their music for quite a long time, over 10 years. So 2005 was when the first Neverending White Lights album came out. It was, as far as I know, like the accumulation and product of a lot of years of work from Daniel Victor, and having the right mix of writing these songs and stuff like that, and then getting the different singers to sing on it. Here it is. Unfortunately, the track list, not sure how visible with the glare it is. I always try to have the lights on here, but the glare comes in. But, and I'll say that Neverending White Lights music, for the most part, is very sort of melancholy, therapeutic in a lot of ways, very sort of methodical at points. Is it progressive rock? Not exactly. Is it art rock? That's where the whole line blurs and everything. Maybe, there's definitely an art to it, but it's definitely not like fat. A lot of it's not like this first album, Act 1, Goodbye, I'm trying to read this, Goodbye Friends, and of the Heavenly Bodies. It's a very spiritual, very thinking about mortality and, your existence and that kind of stuff. Very almost religious, but it's not preaching one specific religion necessarily. I don't know if, I thought I saw that read that Daniel Victor was Jewish, but I don't know about that for sure. A name like Daniel Victor, can be a Jewish name, but I have no idea. But I mean, again, there's no real overt spiritual, like, one denomination that's given in a lot of the songs, but it is very spiritual. But the song that Jimmy Necco sings is the final track. It's called Our Final Hymn, and if I had to pick my favorite on this album, I couldn't say that that's not my favorite. It's so moving. It's very sad, you know. It's very, while at the same time it's very kind of therapeutic, as I just said a minute ago. The lyrics for it, in fact, I was just looking at that earlier. The lyrics for it are very simple. Let's see here. I looked it up because it's just very. There's not a lot. Yeah, saying the rest of our days will be there, but I wanted, so I pretend. That almost reminds me of the lyric from Space Divest from Dream Theater, Kevin Moore. And so I lie and learn to pretend, knowing that sort of reality is just trying to cover up your sort of suffering with people so you don't get them down, get them worrying about you. But I wanted what I can't have, I forget, help me to stand. I don't know if this is someone reflecting on. I know he talked about this in different interviews, Daniel Victor, but the other track that's an obvious go-to on this record for me and for many is the one that was released as a single and got some radio play, called The Grace, which features not Jimmy Necco but Dallas Green from, I believe it's Canadian bands City and Colour and Alexis on Fire. Dallas Green has an amazing voice, to say the least. I mean, he almost rivals Jimmy in some ways, Jimmy Necco, in that his voice is so clean and angelic at points. Now, his primary music I've spent very little time listening to. City and Colour I've tried to, but between that and then he did a cover of Settled Down from Kimbra many years ago. It was just breathtaking. And The Grace is amazing, and it was such a big deal. I don't know, it was a few years back, like 2015, yeah, it was like the 10-year anniversary, that's what it was. Daniel had it pressed on a 10-inch vinyl, like an EP for The Grace. It looks like it has a demo of something called My Fate, which I'm pretty guilty of. I don't know if maybe I listened to it. I think I might have listened to it when it came out, but I hope I didn't just screw this up. Yeah, this case. Yeah, well, what can you do? It's not like the record isn't any, but yeah, this is the Grace. I guess you'd call it an EP, but thick, 20 whatever it was, 180 gram, 200 gram. But yeah, that those are the two, like, sort of. If you're never heard Neverending White Lights, those would be the two songs that The Grace, especially. That song it's not real long. It's got these kind of soaring guitar, almost David Gilmour-esque, that and then Dallas Green's vocals are just so emotive. God, I'm gonna have to do something about this. Anyway, so that was I mean, my favorites on this besides that, I guess I was just listening to it. There's a song called This Longing. And the thing is, like I said, it features lots of different singers. One of them is a singer from the band Our Lady Peace, Rain Maida. I thought it was Maria, but Maida. And he's got a kind of a distinct voice. And Our Lady Peace, I believe, are Canadian too. Most of the names I don't know, though. The only other really significant name to me that I just off the top of my head is Judah Nagler from the band The Velveteen. He does a song called Return Our Lives. Daniel Victor does sing some. I know he sings on the opening track, which is kind of I think of this record for From What I Once Was. But yeah, I mean, let's see, I heard Return Our Lives, that one. And First Days of Spring. And Life is a Dead Scene. So Liar's the one with Rain Maida from Our Lady Peace. But anyway, it came out in 2005. So then a couple years later, and I know there was a difference, Daniel didn't want to write the same record twice, but it was Act 2, and he's been doing these in acts. And so I've got a couple copies of Act 2. It's called The Blood and the Life Eternal. It came out late 2007. I don't know. I could look at the release date on Act 1, but like it seems like all his albums have always come out late in the year. Well, this is August. That was August 23rd. But this was, I think, like November of 2007. So, and 2007 was a great year for music. There's some, yeah, it was October 30th. This has Jimmy Necco again. Neverending, the Act 2, Life and the Blood and the Life Eternal. He does the song Dove Colored Sky. So, and Jimmy Necco with ours or by himself would also perform Dove Colored Sky. I think it's the opening song. That's the second track. Yeah. And I know he's actually performed that with Daniel at times. There's a picture of Daniel Victor right here. It's interesting, the book, because I don't know if I've ever even looked through the book here. But yeah, I mean, it rivals Our Final Hymn, A Dove Colored Sky. It's very impassioned again. It fits. It's slow. A lot of these, there's not a lot of fast songs, especially on the first two act records. But again, it's melancholy. It's sort of like someone who's sort of trying to look to some higher power or spirit to like help them out that's struggling. But yeah, it's a terrific song. It's got this opening drum beat. Yeah, like I always think of that for. My other favorites, and again, I don't know if I'd like choose favorite records over the others, but if I had to choose one, because this is the first one I probably heard, I think, because I didn't discover Neverending until around the time this came out. The Warning, that one has another, again, I think of Pink Floyd and David Gilmour. There's a great sort of warm but melancholy kind of rhythm. It sounds like early 80s, something from the early 80s. But again, it reminds, or like Alan Parsons Project. It's another thing that kind of reminds me of. What is it? The Living is another one featuring Corey Palermo. See, and Jonathan Bates is featured on The Warning. I wish I could really, pinpoint, the bands off the top of my head. Aqualung, who sort of became somewhat popular, it's one dude in, about the mid to late 2000s. I know, like, the current in town here would play Aqualung, and they were reviewed on, I think, on Pitchfork and everything like that. They do this, that featured, the song Distance, which is the 13th track, is featuring Aqualung. It's one guy, I can't remember his name, but I don't know, I mean, there's differences on this record with the first act, the second act, but there's a lot of similarities. The tone and sort of of course, spiritual, I mean, do I love a lot of music like this? Not typically, but there's something very creative about what Daniel did with bringing all these voices together. I've likened it a little bit to Arian. People that love Arian in the progressive rock community. I never really got into Arian. Arian is like sci-fi too, but beyond even the story, they're trying to. It came across way too cheesy for me. This is the absolute polar opposite of cheese to me. This is, again, spiritual. It's almost spiritual, therapeutic. There's like Anathema would be one comparison, I would say, and just like melancholy music. The Antlers, some of ours' music. There's a lot of artists that are really good at writing therapeutic, melancholy music. Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson at times, I would say. Even like, because Daniel Victor, I've get the sense of his influences. He loves David Bowie. I think he's a Pink Floyd and a Peter Gabriel fan. He's a big fan of George Michael, though, but I also think, I get the sense growing up, he was a fan of stuff like, goth rock, you could say, The Cure, and even Ultravox, I would say he might have been familiar with. He's a big music fan. He posts this thing every year called Loveless Radio and does a list of his favorite songs, like 100 songs. But a lot of the stuff, I mean, not all of it, but a lot of it seems to be sort of darker, but not like, this isn't death metal, just very therapeutic music, but he's not trying to be happy. He's been telling the truth. That's kind of what the old Steven Wilson quote about how happy music makes him sad because it seems so superficial, whereas sad music is more honest and true and real. He's more uplifted for that. I'm just paraphrasing. Anyway, Act 2 came out in 2007. So then it took a while, and I don't know the exact details of what exactly happened. I know he was working on the next act, and he'd recorded and written a lot of it, and then he had some kind of accident, unfortunately, and lost the hard drive, his computer. He had like a flooding in his apartment or where he was living, his living space. And so, but then he regrouped, and then a lot of the stuff he had written, I guess, he was able to record what was known as Act 3, but it was Part 1. I don't know if the subtitle is Part 1 on it, but Act 3, Love Will Ruin, which came out in 2000, I want to say it was 2012. It was either 2011 or 2012. Maybe it was the end of 2011. Now, Jimmy Necco's not on this. Dallas Green's not on this one. Yeah, it was called Part 1, Love Will Ruin. Came out at the end of 2011. See, it was like November 8th. It was almost 4 years to the day, like just 1 week past it, that this came out after Act 2. And this record is different in the sense that beyond some of the guest singers are different. There's not as many guest singers on this because like almost every singer other than Daniel himself, Daniel Victor, is on almost every song on both the first 2 acts. But this, Evan Conrad is the one that I think of the most. He sings on 2 or 3 songs, and his voice is a lot like Jimmy Necco, but he has a very good voice, and so it fit. But the other thing about this record, Act 3, is that the songs are more kind of upbeat and rocking. It's really more of a rock record, whereas this is more like this one and the first record are more like atmospheric, like, art, whatever, ambient. I guess you'd call it rock or pop or folk or, indie or alternative or whatever. But this record has a clear-cut, different energy, and I think Daniel was intentional about that. Unfortunately, it didn't, as far as like reaching people and success and how much it sold, I don't think it sold even to the, I don't know. It didn't have as much success, I don't think, unfortunately. But, and I'll admit that, even though he did some videos for it and everything like that, here's a picture of Daniel Victor there. This is my least favorite of the 3, but I think I still like it a lot, and Falling Apart is the song that I think of maybe the most for it. And that Bed of Stars or Evan Conrad, that's what features. And there's a video for that, and there's also a song featuring Bed of Stars on Lonely War and The Hereafter. So Bed of Stars / Evan Conrad is featured on 3 tracks here. The last is the track list of Act 3, Love Will Ruin. Hot Hot Heat, who I know the name, but Todd Clark is on one song, Starlight. Ghost Ship features Hot Hot Heat. But I think something like Goodbye, Daniel does the vocals on that one, I think. I haven't listened to it in a long time, unfortunately. I was trying to revisit some of the stuff over the last day or 2 here. But, yeah, and this was supposed to be Part 1, and he had a Part 2. He had enough songs for a Part 2, and the truth is that we've been hearing a lot of about the next Neverending White Lights from Daniel Victor, but he's a perfectionist, it seems, and he's only going to release albums and songs the way, if he's happy with them, the way they should be released. But also, this interview back in 2020, I heard on, he was like more than one podcast, he kind of hinted at that the industry kind of has left him cold, and he hasn't found the sort of need to just get things out because of the way the music industry has been going. But I know last year he seemed to kind of be of the feeling he was kind of coming out of that, and of the feeling that now he was ready to make music and record music again and release it again. It hasn't happened yet, but maybe it'll happen sometime in the next 6 months to a year and a half. Finally, we'll get Act 4. Or I also got the impression that, because I think he mentioned the next album, Act 4 or whatever it is, or Act 3 Part 2, wasn't necessarily going to have many, if any, guest singers. So it's going to be more of him. Maybe be more instrumental, because I know there's a lot of instrumental passages, a lot of ambient, spacey kind of passages he uses. So, but the other thing I do own from Daniel Victor is his. I want to say this was originally music that he recorded as like a demo before before Act 1 came out, because the backstory on this, it's called Black Ribbons, the band, the project. Again, project or band. And the album was called Neuromancer. And I'm not sure if he's the only one involved at this, but it was released in 2012, right around the same time I think Act 3 came out. But at the same time, I remember him talking about how it wasn't Neverending White Lights music, and it was music that, yeah, the late, well, okay, very brief, okay, so Dimly Basement during a very brief 2-month period in the late 2000s in Windsor. So actually, okay, this wasn't around Act 1. For some reason I was thinking it was. But stylistically, this is more of that sort of industrial, not industrial, but goth rock. But it's, again, rock. I mean, it's most similar to Act 3, but it's also a lot not, very similar, very not like Act 3. Because it's really more, I wouldn't call it melancholy music exactly. It's more, I don't know. I mean, I was sampling some of it today. I would just say it's, you know, kind of darky, kind of dark rock music, you know, using like a lot of textures and synths and stuff like that. And so it doesn't resemble, I mean, is it like Nine Inch Nails? I don't know if we would call it industrial exactly, or Ministry of that kind of, I don't know if it's quite as heavy as that, but it's not bad. I mean, I guess I've never grown attached to it as any of the Neverending White Lights albums, but Black Ribbons, I don't know if this is a one-off though. I mean, if it's side project per se for Daniel, or, you know, I was trying to see if there was like a credits list on here, because he still was the main person behind this. Yeah, I mean, yep, pretty much it's him. It's just him under a different persona, basically. Kind of like Matt Mahaffey with Wired All Wrong and Self, or you name it, you know, so. But anyway, that's my kind of take and story on Neverending White Lights. I'll certainly be talking about them whenever any more music does come from Neverending White Lights and Daniel Victor. But thank you for watching. Give it a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.